It's not like thinking positively. That's not the message.
Yeah.
It's overcoming, 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 overcoming until we become somebody else. And when that occurs, and the person starts thinking differently, and they start acting differently, and they start feeling differently, they're a new personality, and they start seeing those synchronicities and serendipities. Now, crossing that river of change, the creative process now gets exciting, because what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What kind of attention and intention do you want to place so that that becomes the loudest voice in your head? And if you keep practicing it, the hardware becomes a software program, and it'll say, Jay, you can do anything. Jay, you live in no time and accomplish everything. Jay, you're unlimited. You just got to hang with it. On the other side of this is greatness. Whatever you want to program in there, you get to program in there. If you sat down and say, how am I going to be with my wife, my husband, my partner? How am I going to be with my kids? How am I going to be at work with my coworkers? How am I going to be in traffic? And you close your eyes and you begin to rehearse in your mind. If you're truly present, the brain does not know the difference between the real life experience and what you're imagining. So now the brain goes from a record of the past to a map to the future. Now you're installing the hardware. Keep practicing it. It becomes automatic, it becomes easier. Now it's a software program. You may just start behaving differently. And then if you said, well, listen, I'm not going to wait for my healing to feel gratitude. I'm not going to wait for my new relationship to feel love. I'm going to actually teach my body emotionally what that future feels like before it happens. Now, this is a big turnaround for a lot of people, because we're so reliant on the outer world to change our inner world, right?
And waiting and postponing.
Waiting is not creating. I mean, period. And when people they could have the greatest intentions in the world, but if they don't combine that with an elevated emotion, there's no signal, because the elevated emotion is the carrier. It's the energy that carries the thought. So then when we're in separation, in lack, waiting for our wealth to feel abundance, we're basically living our whole life in pain, right? So then if you reason this, and a person can get up from their meditation and they literally feel differently, and they're feeling the emotions of their future before it happens, this is turning the whole process around. They can't be looking for it. Why would they be looking for it if they felt like it already happened? Now there's no separation. Now this is when those serendipities and coincidences and opportunities begin to show up in people's lives. So it's work, but then when they start seeing the experience in their life, all of a sudden they start believing they're more of the creator of their life and less of the victim of their life. So I say to people when they come to our workshops, oh, I'm going to take you way further than where you normally stop.
Yeah.
Because you're only going to have two choices.
Yes.
You're either going to let your energy drop and suffer and get into the time and my body and when's this going to end and I'm hungry. And those are all primal drives. Or you're going to apply a formula and in the unknown, you learn how to be comfortable in the unknown. And when people, this is so funny because you stretch a person outside of the known and it's not scary. Nothing happened to them. And all of a sudden, they relax more into the present moment. They're not thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow. They're not going to think about what happened yesterday. Now we watch 1,500 people just by the end of an event, just totally present.
Yeah.
It's completely different people. And where you place your attention is where you place your energy. There's energy for them to heal. They have energy. They can execute. So it's something that it's hard to, you can only talk around, you know?
You have to experience it.
It's like, how do you explain a mango to somebody? What does it taste like? You got to experience it. But the cool thing about it, I think, of course, speaking from my present state of ignorance, but I've been watching, closely. You can't tell me any longer that you're too sick to do this work. I have seen in the last couple of years, blind people seeing, deaf people hearing, people with strokes that were paralyzed, moving their limbs, people with Parkinson's disease that had tremors or paralysis moving, MS, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, rare genetic disorders, tumors. There it is, then it's gone. You can't tell me you're too sick to do this work. I mean, of course, people come up against themselves. And when they come up against themselves, those sick people came up against their fear, like, you're going to die in 3 months. And they had every reason to not do the work, but they showed up in spite of their fear, and they overcame their fear a little bit more. There are people that had self-doubt. And their condition was getting worse, and their family was worried about them. They could have doubted and said, I give up. But they showed up for themselves again, and they overcame their doubt a little bit more. There were days that they were really feeling sick, and their body was really failing, and they could have said, I'm too sick to do this meditation. They did it sometimes 2 or 3 times a day because nothing else was working.
Yeah.
And they overcame their body. They could have said, I don't have enough time. I got kids. I got obligations. I got a job. They made the time to do it. And that was the overcoming process. You can't tell me that you're too out of shape. You can't tell me, you're too old. We have elders in this work. I can show you brain scans that are so elegant and so beautiful. And the arousal that they're having is ecstasy. It's coherence in the brain. So you can't even tell me that you never meditated before, because husbands who get dragged to our events by wives who are sitting there going, who is this guy? And they're listening to the science and it makes sense. And it comes down to the practical. They're just saying, I don't know just tell me what to do. They follow the exact formulas. I think we're all faced with great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as impossible situations. And in order, for me personally, and after looking through your book and reading a good portion of it, for me, there's no school of ancient wisdom that you need to go to be initiated. Your life is your initiation if you're paying attention. So we meet challenges in our life from a certain level of mind, right? A certain level of consciousness or unconsciousness. And even Einstein said we have to go to a greater level of consciousness than the consciousness that's created the problem. Well, what is consciousness? Consciousness is awareness. And awareness means possibilities that you haven't thought of before. So we confront problems or challenges in our life. And as a side note, I was having breakfast with a researcher just last week who's studying what happens when we perceive a condition in our environment as a problem, how it weakens the organism. They're measuring this. And when a person sees it as a challenge, how they draw energy, they raise the energy of their body back into order. So if we said, I want to be wealthy or I want to be healthy, well, what you want to be that because you're not it. So the initiation of going from not it here to it here, you're going to have to climb some steps. And there's going to be some blind spots. So you try it out and it doesn't work. Well, that's because there's a part of you that's still in a habit. There's part of you that's still unconscious. Okay, so what is it about myself in that circumstance that I am feeling about that circumstance, and that feeling is causing me to think about it? So you say, oh, it's impossible, they'll never change. I'll hire a hitman, I'll hire the mafia, I'll hire an attorney, I'll have my friend's friend to talk to him, and nothing changes, right? Well, you're not separate from that experience. You're involved in it, and how you think and how you feel broadcasts energy into the field. So your energy is the same every day, and as long as your energy is the same, nothing's going to change in your life either. And nobody changes until they change their energy. So then, what piece of knowledge, what piece of information, what would love do? What would greatness look like? Okay, I don't know. All right, well, certainly somebody in history has faced this problem. Don't get on Facebook and say, does anybody have any answers? Go look it up and study and read and learn. You'll own it. And you'll say, wow, that person that was wealthy, they failed 500 times.
Yeah.
Well, hell, I had the wrong view of wealth. Okay, then failure's not a thing. I got to overcome failure. Well, yeah, just climb the step.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm reacting to that circumstance with the same emotion. That emotion is firing the same thoughts. I'm broadcasting the same energy into the field. If I were facing that circumstance and situation again with that person, that circumstance, what do I learn from that circumstance? How could I do it differently the next time? Find out a solution and rehearse it. Install the circuitry so when you get in the circumstance, you're not going to respond in an automatic habituation.
Yeah.
Now you're at a greater level of consciousness. Now you're looking at possibilities that you weren't looking at before because you were unconscious. Now, that process of trial and error is so important in the spiritual path. How many times do we have to forget before we remember?
Oh, God.
And then we remember and we forget again. And it takes constantly remembering until we stop forgetting. And when we get to that point, now we're conscious. Now there's wisdom. And wisdom is the memory of the experience without the emotional charge. Now you're ready for the new adventure. So then people draw conclusions and say, oh, it's that person that ripped me off. It's that person that what? Now you don't create your reality? Oh, you only create your reality when things are good. Now, well, somehow you got to tango through this. Somehow your objectivity in not reacting emotionally is going to change the energy of how you address this situation. So then we keep going in introspection. At the end of the day, if you really wanted to be wealthy, say, how did I do today? Did I make the right choices? Was I ethical? Was I purpose-driven? Was I interested in making a difference? Was I fair? Was I tempered? Did I really think before I spoke? What did I remember reading about that book, about that person that did it? How did I do? And if you said, when did I fall from grace? When did I lose it? Okay, I want that opportunity again. I want another shot at that. And I'm going in this way. What would love do in this situation? What would greatness do? And now you evolve your experience, and somehow there's a door, there's an opening, something shifts, something changes. And now, here we go, we climb another ladder, and then all of a sudden, there's another challenge. And then people who finally arrive at their abundance, they could care less if they're abundant. They're already knowing that they've earned the right for it. So there's sometimes a shortcut in the process if we really learn and we really get it. But the trial and error is so important because not only is the person earning the right to be wealthy, but they're earning the right to live in worthiness, worthy to receive.